Hi, I'm 𝗙𝗲𝗺𝗀 of QRx Partners, and welcome to this week's Quality Heretic. If you've been following me, you know a lot of times I talk about getting the terminology right in your quality system. And I understand that can seem sort of nitpicky, but the reality is it is important. Getting the right words out, um, from the context of the standards often has a lot to do with whether or not you do the right things under the standards and the regulations. And if you've been at this for any length of time, you start to realize that what seem like common words don't have the same meanings within the context of the standards and the regulations. So it is important to get the terminology right. This week, what I want to talk about are forms and templates. I often see this done oddly when I go to other companies. And often there's an intermixing of these things. Things that I would think of as forms are listed as templates and vice versa. But in some companies where everything's a form or everything's a template, and they are meant to be different things. And it can help you, again, sort out how things work in your quality system if you take the time to define that as part of your documentation structure. Now, we all have one of these somewhere in your quality manual, right? Everybody's got one of these pyramid diagrams that lays out your document hierarchy. Right, quality manual at the top, sometimes policies up there, your standard operating procedures, your work instructions, and then your records. Okay, that's fine. And actually, next week, I'm going to have a little talk about where there might be a layer missing here. But that's another discussion. Like I said, today we're going to focus on forms and templates. So remember, all of the things in that pyramid are types of documented information, as ISO 9000 now calls it. If you're in the ISO 1345 world, we still do talk about documents versus records. That might be another good video to talk about what exactly the difference is there. Um, but they're all types of documented information. And so, where do forms and templates fit into that hierarchy? Because they do fit in different ways. So, templates are intended to be a type of document you use to create some other type of document so that you get a consistent look and feel and content. Because you don't want your SOPs all looking different or your test reports to all be laid out in different ways. You want consistency, right? Which makes it easier for people to generate those things, makes it easier for the people who have to read them, ensures that they are meeting if there is any requirements for the content like if you're doing an FDA submission, right? It ensures that things are laid out correctly and done the right way. Forms, on the other hand, are documents used to create records, right? And records are the evidence of doing something, right? Where everything says, oh, you must have objective evidence of doing something, right? Yeah, you have to have records that shows I did this and here were the results. And I'm also fond of saying if it isn't documented, it didn't happen, right? And that really gets down to the importance of records. So let's say you're going to create a new SOP. Your company likely, or at least should, have an SOP template so that it says, well, you have this section, then this section, right? Okay, first is purpose, then there's scope, then there's responsibility, right? The very typical stuff there, and that's a whole nother discussion about which sections should be a front, which ones should go in an appendix. But I won't go off on that tangent either today. But you have something that helps people write an SOP so that your SOPs again are consistent, right? And so you might have something that looks like this that says, yep, there's purpose and scope, there's responsibility, right? And so on, right? With instructions for what exactly is supposed to go in there so that the likelihood that someone produces a good SOP the first time around is pretty high. That's the point of a template, right? Is to help guide them through building something that looks like all the others that are of the same type. And, if you were doing an inspection, right, where you need to have a record of evidence that you perform the inspection, then there's usually a form to fill out, right? There's something to write the data down on or to check. Maybe there's a checklist that shows, yes, I remember to do this, I remember to do that, and here was the result or any deviation or something, right? There's a form to fill out, and the filled out form becomes my evidence or becomes my record that I did that. And that's really the gist of these two things, right? So this is also something to keep in mind. It might sometimes blows people's minds, right? All records are documents, but not all documents are records. Because remember, the role of a record is to provide evidence. The role of a document is to provide information. So records are a type of document, but not all documents serve the purpose of providing evidence of something. So you use templates to create documents, and you use forms to create records. Again, is your quality system going to fall apart because you have an inspection template? No, but I could get confused. I could look at that. A lot of times when I'm doing an audit, I'll walk in there and somebody will say, I've literally seen inspection templates, and I'm thinking, so that tells me how to build an inspection instruction, how to perform the inspection. And then I look at examples, I go, no, that's actually the form to fill out. So it just, again, right, you want clarity in your quality system, you want consistency in your quality system, and that comes down to getting these terms correct and consistent. Now, you could call them whatever you want, frankly. I always make the joke, if you want to call your records Bob, go ahead and call them Bob. There's no rule that says you have to call them that. But there are recognized terms, and we want to make sure everybody understands them consistently so that they then perform consistently and hopefully at a high level. So, as always, love to hear your comments on this. Let's get a discussion going. Otherwise, I will see you next week.